now.
Bitch.
Should be live. Hello, hello, hello. Come back.
What, did we just lose it?
Well, I'm trying to drag things and it's not dragging.
Okay. Have you tried dropping things?
Oh.
And then you can drop it like it's hot. Drop it like it's
Okay, so we're live on YouTube now.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah, we've been live for like a minute.
Really?
I got 21 people up there. Got a couple highs. Hellos.
Welcome, people, to Talking About News. So, Ryan, do you want me to actually have like an official, like, hey, this is now the start, so that we can cut it out and make it so the video is pretty in the future?
Sure, we can do that.
Trying to figure out what the hell Ralph is. His video looks fantastic. It looks really good.
He's got a good camera. I don't know why Discord doesn't want to detect my webcam, so I'm looking at my iMac FaceTime camera, which is crap.
So weird.
I experimented. I just got like a DSLR camera and plugged it in HDMI, and so it's a big lens.
Yeah,
it's
does
a big
well.
lens.
It's true.
Show title: It's a big lens.
Yeah, show title.
There we go. There we go. All right, so let's go ahead and get started. I'm not going to do the diddly things because we've done that 2-3 times, and we're reusing the same shit again and again. But this is the part, I guess, where we would insert funky news music intro. Maybe. All right. So let's go ahead and get started.
We'll work on that.
Use your imagination.
Welcome everybody for showing up to this incredibly awkward session of BHIS Talking About News. I'm joined by Ralph, or Ralphite. He is on, along with Ryan, or the Shootist. And we have a handful of news stories that we're going to talk about here today. And if it seems a bit off kilter, it's because Ryan and I were doing training for Secure West Virginia, and Ryan's cat's walking in front of his camera as we speak. And that's just distracting. All right, so the first news story that I want to talk about is this Sami Kekmar vulnerability, where he's basically found a way that you can use session initiation protocol, and it basically causes routers to open up ports and allow port forwarding from the outside internet directly to internal IP addresses, which is crazy because he has like this really cool diagram with arrows, and it shows how things actually go. So you basically receive a link, you click the link, and then the attacker, once you visit their web page, can send a specifically crafted packet back to the system, basically saying that you're going to initiate session initiation protocol, which causes the NAT device to open up that port where it's going to relay the traffic directly to the internal RFC 1918 IP address. So Ralph, I don't know, did you have any thoughts on this one other than, holy crap, that's really cool? Actually pulling that out of the air, and who the hell comes up with this stuff?
Yeah,
of course. But
when I first looked at this, I was just like, holy crap, I thought I was good with NAT, but guess not.
Well, I think the issue is not necessarily NAT, but it's kind of that how you converge between network address translation and other protocols like session initiation protocol.
Yeah.
And basically tricking that device to say, hey, I need to open up this port. So there's some cool prior art for these types of attacks, and give you an idea of how this actually has actually played out over the years. Years ago, Dan Kaminsky came up with a very interesting attack where you could actually utilize an internal browser to basically use it as a relay to forward traffic to any arbitrary port of your choosing. So you could basically take a browser and then you could relay that traffic. And you've seen this type of technique in the browser exploitation framework, which a lot of people have had experience with. But the difference was back then, it could be arbitrary TCP/IP access to any port. Now, in response, what browsers did is they actually restricted the ports that you're allowed to relay from one browser to another to actual web ports. So you're not able to actually redirect traffic from a browser to say, okay, we're going to connect to port 445 and access Windows SMB TCP ports. You can't do that, right? But this is interesting because it's taking the individual host and the browser out of the mix, and it's tricking that edge NAT device to open that port up. Now, a lot of people use these ports, this kind of network address translation direct port opening for things like video games. So you can go into your router and say, hey, I want anything that comes in on port 5000 to be redirected to my internal video game machine so I can host up like Settlers of Catan or something like that. Or 1234 would be Open Red Alert or whatever game that you would have. So you could basically transfer that directly in. But now with this, it's completely arbitrary, which is kind of nuts. So I don't know. I think that they demonstrated the attack on a couple of different devices, but they think it's going to be an issue on a lot more devices as well. So Ralph, any other thoughts on this one?
Yeah, no, I mean, it's definitely an interesting attack. It's probably going to be a little bit more exploited probably in the consumer side. But you know, the commercial side could be just as vulnerable to this. I mean, a lot of these networks are using that as well. So it definitely is interesting. I am interested. I didn't get to read the entire piece because this thing pretty much just came out, but about exactly some of like the hit requirements for it. You know, as far as on the other side, like what NAT device is there any kind of remediation controls? I mean, I know there's a couple of different ways. You could pretty much turn off the ability to request to open those ports in your, you know, firewall and NAT device, right? But you can still punch a hole out. So if like if your system, you know, wants to open up a port for this, you know, it's going to do it, right? So it's interesting.
I love how he broke the data packets up. I'm going to put it up on the screen here so everyone can see it. So anytime Sammy's come out with a vulnerability, he's always just done a fantastic job of actually documenting the vulnerability. And whenever we're doing pen tests at BHIS, like if we find a vulnerability in something like Oracle, PeopleSoft, or anything that's web related, we try to document out something similar. But he did a fantastic job here, where basically talking about the first packet, and then here we have the second packet. We got the boundary size, can be a random length, and then it's got dejected, and what is it, adjusted through automatic feedback loop. This packet is critical. You can see all the little carrots going up. We now have control of everything except the boundary and the post data and the overflow. So he's actually breaking out where he can get in that third packet. If you look at it via web RTC, you see the SIP. It's really hard to see right down here. Let me zoom in. But in this SIP request, it says 2.0 TCP, he can actually extract out the internal IP address, which is just really, really super cool. Showing how this is not just a vulnerability of being able to punch a hole open in a NAT device to allow that connection to come in, but it's also kind of an internal data leakage vulnerability as well, which is awesome. Then you can see the contact. It says SIP at Sammy at this particular IP address, and then you can put in the arbitrary port. And I think that's, so what is that port? It looks to me like that might be a MySQL port, if I might be mistaken on that one.
I don't, 3306, I don't think 3306 is MySQL.
I know, I might be getting that wrong. But either way, that part of it right there, and I'm sure there's going to be somebody correcting me.
Oh, wait, no, you might be right. That might be MySQL. Yeah, that's MySQL. Yep, okay. You're right. Yep, you're good.
So, hold on. So, all right. So we got that port, but here you're getting the internal IP address, right? And then here you're saying this is the port that the router is going to forward that traffic to. And the router automatically pulls out, this is the internal IP address, and then this is the internal port, and it automatically creates that rule to forward that traffic to the victim on that port. This is stupid cool. I also, one of my concerns is how long is it going to take for this particular vulnerability to be addressed? As Ralph, as you mentioned, this is going to be one of those vulnerabilities that's hitting home users for quite some time. And if we actually have like a wormable Windows exploit on top of it, oh my God,
Yeah.
Horrible. Because then you're
Yeah.
able to actually pull out the Windows internal IP address and hit it. So this is a cool vulnerability.
It's a botnet heaven. That's what it is for sure.
Yeah.
That'll be who really weaponizes it.
Absolutely. So I hope everybody gets a chance to read the entire write-up. And I would also encourage you as much as possible, try to get directly to the security researchers page. This is something I was talking about some of my friends that do bug bounty work. And they said that one of the things that concerns them is people get the news from some arbitrary website and they don't link and people don't read it directly from the security researchers blog directly. Anytime you have a vulnerability, try to get to the blog with the initial write-up, if at all possible. Because one, Sammy does a great job of writing it up, but it's also giving some credit to the people that actually put the work in as well. Are you ready for something buzzworthy? Let's talk about jobs. Oh my God, this page is a nightmare. This Forbes advertisement, I think it's funny. It's like a Palo Alto advertisement.
Oh, I missed it. I got those ad blockers.
Yeah. Oh, lucky you. I've had some fun with the different ads. So, so here we have an article. What are the fastest growing cybersecurity skills? And if you remember, traditionally, it was all about the skills associated with like pen testing and forensics. But it seems that has changed with this particular one. So let me try to zoom in so people can see it. And you were talking about kind of how the buzzwords kicked up. We got application development security, cloud security. What the literal hell does that even mean at this point?
Oh my God, that is like a mind trap of just stuff, right? It's like writing the book right now. They're literally writing the books right now about cloud security, and then they changed the API up, and then
I still wonder if Bo is currently teaching a class on cloud pen testing, and I wonder if he's had any labs break, because literally he's had labs that they tested the day before, and the next day they changed things up on him. The big thing that I would like to know is, do we think that there's a difference between application development security and cloud security at this point?
I think there's a difference, right? I mean, because we're talking, I guess we were talking like full stack or not. But I mean, because like the cloud security, this is the API, this is like their product, right? But the application, it could be written in something that doesn't have to do with the cloud, right? Eventually. Yep. So I mean, we could that program. Depending if it's web facing or not. So, I mean, I'm sure what they're talking about is more web application, but you know, to be.
But it's got to be. It's getting to the point where if you're an application developer, you've got to know cloud security. So,
I mean, you got to know security in general. Period. Right. I mean, there's so many years of people developing horrible code or insecure code that works, right? Because we got to make it work, and then we're like, let's think about security later. So
yeah. One of the things I think is really cool about the push that we're seeing in security now is, you know, you've heard me rant and rave since you've joined about like legacy applications, and Egypt was ranting and raving about legacy applications. And we had another test. Oh, who was it? They had a bunch of Server 2003 systems. And then Marcello had legacy applications. And I think it's a lot more difficult to have legacy applications persist for an extended period of time in the cloud than it would be on an network. So that's a good thing. I think that's good. Then we have risk management, which is compliance more than likely. Threat intel. I wish somebody would actually tell me what the hell that was. It's one of my big pet peeves. Incident response, I totally agree with. Incident responders, I'm surprised it's not higher up here as well. So, and then at the bottom, health information security. Now, my question is, I wonder if this is, they did this point in time assessment and Ryuk came out, and now all the hospitals are like, hey, we're looking for security people that understand healthcare information systems, and see how that works out as well. Then there's something I don't know what the difference is, like security strategy and governance, risk management, and compliance and controls. They're all kind of different prism angles on the same thing, which is interesting.
Yeah, I mean, to this, the big one is cloud security. It's just an emerging space. You know, I think that that's not going to be changing anytime soon either. So
no, I don't think it's going to be changing anytime at all. But you saw pen testers. Red team is totally not on here.
Yeah, not even in the line. I think these are just talking about like the highest salary premiums for those particular.
Yeah, but going back to the red team thing, if you go back a few years ago, red teaming was just at the top. I think
at the top, yeah.
And how it goes back and forth and how we're dealing.
I think it's just a lot of companies are like, hey, we got to get on this cloud train. We need people to do that. And so let's go hire people. There must be people that are, perfect at this or, experts. And, there are, but it's just few far in between. And so that's where this premium and salary and also the fun stuff.
I also think that it's oversaturation. If you talk to a lot of college students, you ask them, what do you want to be when you grow up? They're like, I want to be a pen tester. And I think that market, and from your experience in your previous firm, and anytime we talk about job openings at BHIS, our inbox is flooded. Like it's just completely flooded. And what happens is if you have a whole bunch of people that are trying to enter this field and they're willing to work for like peanuts to get experience, you're going to lose that premium right off the get-go, which is kind of sad. These jobs, except for like application security, cloud security, I think are pretty cool. A lot of these jobs are just like crap jobs that no one wants. And you can see
they're not sexy. They're not sexy and they're not exciting, but somebody's got positions they got to fill and
they absolutely do. They absolutely do. And I think we're seeing a little bit of that. So that's the job. Ryan, do we have any questions so far?
Not really. The only question I saw earlier was about mentioning EDR or FW detection. I have no idea what that is.
I think it's firewall detections.
Yeah.
I think it was talking about any mentions of EDR firewall detections for that, or for I believe it's for the slipstream, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, more than likely it's for the slipstream. But honestly, at this point, there's probably very little because it's all being handled within the browser. And if you're looking at EDRs, usually EDRs are total complete trash at detecting things that are happening in the browser space. Like you can add plugins, you can add apps, you can do all kinds of things to the browser, and EDRs are like, yeah, it's a black box, and they use JavaScript, and that makes us cry. So they try to avoid it. For firewall detections, I'm sure that there's going to be firewall detections within that packet level analysis. It has to be sent clear text, right? Because the firewall, the NAT device, needs to see that traffic to be able to open it up. The kicker is there's going to be obfuscation on top of it. So yeah, there's going to be some signatures, but they're probably going to be real brittle, super static signatures over the next couple of weeks. So
yeah, I was going to say we'll probably see the patches or the mitigation controls in the firewall as opposed to on the system, right? So
yeah.
That's probably where we'll see it.
People are great at patching their Linksys firewalls, right?
Well, that's why the home users screwed, man. They're all screwed. They have no idea. They have no idea. They don't care. They don't understand. Literally, it's zero understanding. And they'll be like, my computer's running slow. I don't know why. And somebody will be like, you've got some kind of malware. So
it's bad. It's bad. Hey, speaking of things that general users won't know, we got a new local privilege escalation vulnerability on Microsoft Windows. It seems like, I don't know, but it seems like we get this drip of these like every month or two. And it's just enough for us in the pen testing field to we're going to use this probably for the next couple of weeks or months.
You get like this long of a window, right, on some of these.
It's like sit back and wait. Mm-hmm. My favorite thing that happens is when you're on a pen test and something like this drops in the pen test. Yeah. Like you're getting your ass kicked by they've actually gone through and they took their EDR, they tuned it down, they're using application allow listing, they got it. You're just getting kicked in the crotch again and again. They're making fun of you, and then from heaven just comes this new exploit.
Yeah. When zero logon dropped, I got to use it on an engagement. So we were just onto the first box, right? We're gonna make our pivot. And they had local admin on the box on every system, we were local admin on this system, right? And it was like that same day the POCs dropped, right? Because you got to realize that the exploit had been out and it had been patched, okay? But it was the day that the POCs dropped, so it was like instant usability, right? So it's the same days those came out, we immediately went and did like a whole day of testing to make sure we weren't going to brick this DC. and immediately hit it. That night we popped it and went from there.
What I absolutely love about that story is you have companies and you have people that I'm sure that are listening to this news thing, and they're like, so how long do we have to test our patches before we implement them? Zero time.
Zero time.
That's how much time you have. None whatsoever. And it's just so cool.
I think the POC was out. It was maybe 3 weeks after the actual patch. So like before it actually got widespread POC availability, like that was the big buzz. That was like the big piece. It wasn't the vulnerability because it was just like a snippet of a CVE that was high that you should definitely patch. And everyone's like sees that all the time. It was the POC when that came out. Everyone's like, all right, guys, immediately right now, go patch.
And the thing that sucks about a lot of those POCs is, you know, if something hits Metasploit, there's usually a number of people that test it and they give you an evaluation of its rating and how stable it is. A lot of those POCs that are written in Python, when you write it, it's like,
oh yeah.
You know,
it was that particular vulnerability. For anyone who's not aware, it does have the potential to actually knock a DC off, take it out of the out of the forest, and so it's not getting updates. If you know what you're doing, you can bring it back. But if you don't, you can pretty much just like turn this into a unusable Windows server, right? So, but yeah, interesting. Yeah, it is fun. And I mean, back to this. Local privilege escalation. We have enough context here, so probably somebody will develop a POC. Sometimes they don't because of the complexities in it, but I think we have enough context here.
Well, let's look at this. Okay, so if we look at it for generating a POC, like if we're somebody that's really, really good at taking these, and this came from Project Zero from Google, so they have an actual exploit for it. Oh, yeah. Anybody that has been through an exploit dev class, let's look at it. So they're basically saying we have an error that exists in this, it looks like random adapt format property block, where the buffer is allocated from a value that is truncated to be 16 bits. So you're already getting the field offset, you're getting the actual call that you need to make into. So the size matters because there's only certain fields that are a certain size. And then it says, the function then goes on and performs a binary to ASCII hex conversion. So the reason why this is important is whenever you do that binary to hex conversion, if you've ever seen the movie The Martian, where he's trying to transmit data with very, very, very limited resources, he uses hexadecimal to do it because you can transfer more data using hex in a smaller size than actual in binary, right?
Yep.
So, you know, it just kind of helps take the binary data and make it smaller. My favorite story about this is we had a SANS instructor, and she was reading the back of someone's shirt and it was all in hex, and she was able to actually go through, and Judy was able to go through and actually read through the hex, decode the packet on the t-shirt, and realized that the person that did the packet capture misspelt the domain in the DNS packet. And everybody in the room, all the SANS instructors, stood up and bowed to Judy. And were like, that is scary, right? Like, this lady can read hex like you and I read a freaking comic book. And she looked at everybody. She got this confused look on her face, and she goes, what? It's hex. It's twice as fast as reading it in binary. So, you know, really incredibly smart lady. But the point is, you have a field in binary, and you can reduce that down into a much smaller size field in hexadecimal. But what's interesting is whenever you convert it into hex, it basically keeps the original buffer's length that causes the write to go out of bounds. And that's the key. So there's enough here for somebody that actually writes exploits to be able to sit down and say, okay, so I'm looking for a field in this particular function, and it's got to be 16 bits, and I basically assign value to it in ASCII and then ASCII, hexi. Created a technical word. We do it in ASCII, and then we convert it to hex, and then that allows us to overrun the bounds. So there's a lot here. And what's also cool about this is you talked about sandbox escape, and that's interesting too, right? Because this basically means that you're not just getting local privilege escalation, but it'll allow you to break out of an application that may be sandboxed as well, which is really, really super cool. It says here, exploitation of this bug won't be easy due to heap-based memory corruption. I like how you read this. It's like Project Zero did it, and they're like, "Oh no, we got this. If you try to do it, it's gonna suck. But good luck to you." So it's going to be a little bit more difficult to actually get the exploit. But there's a lot of people that have these skills now for writing these types of exploits.
Yeah,
So,
I won't be surprised if it's not quick. I don't know. Sometimes you see these, and it, you know, because I've done tests where you have outdated boxes, and you'll see these like huge CVEs, and they're like 10, blah blah blah. But nobody ever wrote a POC for it, right? You know, maybe just missed the opportunity, or it was hard to find, or you know, and there's a different reasons why, right? Sometimes it's just nobody decided to do it. Somebody probably did, but they didn't release it publicly. That's the other thing too that happens often.
Yep. And here is the super sexy Project Zero write-up for this particular vulnerability. But this particular article that is really, really important for people to focus on, I'm going to highlight it. I know it's a little bit hard for people to see. So whenever we zoom in on this, it says, note, we have evidence that the following bug is being used in the wild. Therefore, the bug is subject to a 7-day disclosure deadline. And you can see we actually have the beginning of some sample code associated with it, and also some stack corruption output as well. So,
well, there's that.
Yeah. So if it's being exploited in the wild, the idea of getting that proof of concept code, somebody's going to capture a packet capture of this, or they're going to grab a file off a system. It's going to be sandboxed, and you're going to have not just POC, but you're going to have functional exploit code probably within 5 to 7 days.
Yeah. I mean, these would be probably more advanced threat actors, or somebody who bought access to this, right? So
yeah, absolutely. All right, so that's it for our stories for the week. I hope everybody enjoyed it. We tried to do a mix of technical and non-technical stories. So thank you very much for showing up again, Ralph. I appreciate it. And
no problem. It's fun. I love it.
Are we ready to wrap this up, Ryan?
Sure. Let's do it.
All right, let's kill it. All right, thanks, everybody.
Later, guys.
And killed.